To let you in on a secret, I couldn't decide what I wanted to be when I grew up. I went to the circus and decided I was going to be a lion tamer. And there I was with my little chair and poor dog. I went to a baseball game and decided I wanted to play third base for the Boston Red Sox. And that didn't last very long. I saw a movie called The Song of St. Bernadette, and I decided I was going to be a saint. So I set out to be a saint. And as a saint, I would volunteer for the things that nobody else wanted to do. I would clean the dishes, which my mother loved. I would do anything that I thought a saint would do. But the problem is that nobody else seemed to notice how saintly I was. Nobody would thank me, and so I would pout and get angry. But saints don't get angry. So then I'd get all, I can't be a saint because I'm getting angry. I have to not get angry. And, you start doing all this. Then I tried to give my money away, and my father wouldn't let me. And so I got mad at my father. Yeah, but there's that thing about the Ten Commandments that you're supposed to honor your mother and your father, so how saintly can that be? And I finally just gave up. I decided that my life career was not probably going to be as a saint. You can imagine my parents, somebody would say, well, what do your daughters want to do when they grow up? And they'd say, oh, Judy wants to be an economist, and Lanny wants to be an architect, and Jane wants to be a saint. And needless to say, my older sisters did not believe I was going to be a saint. I think the next day I probably saw another baseball game and decided I was going to be first base for the Boston Red Sox, and that was the end of my sainthood. So it is rather ironic that here I am as the assistant for outreach and mission, because that kind of has saintliness attached to it. But fortunately, the job description did not say anything about my being a saint. And frankly, it didn't say anything about you all being saints. So I think we're safe here. Because saints tend to be lonely, saints tend to die messy deaths, saints work alone. God made us in God's image, yes, but God also made us human. God wanted us to have humanness, to be whole humans. As humans, we have strengths and weaknesses. As humans, we have loves and hates. As humans, we are a whole package as God made us packages. And as the gospel said, it is our call to be good stewards of what God has given us. And that is our calling, to be fully human, to be the human that God wanted us to be, to want to please God as humans. And that desire to please God pleases God, to quote Thomas Merton. So what does that mean, in essence? It doesn't mean that some of us aren't called to saints, and I'm sure God is delighted that some of us are saints, but we're also humans. And in that humanness, how do we reach out to each other? In our house in Maine, every summer, we put out the folding table and we put out the puzzle of the year, the puzzle of the summer. And we work on that puzzle all summer long. And you go by and you put one piece in, or you go by and put one piece out. And it always ends up at the end, we're missing that one piece. That is what God's call of us today is. We are puzzle pieces. And our job is to figure out the tabs and the open place, the networking of each piece that we bring to this church, to this community, to this world. Some of us have holes that need to be filled by others. Some of us have the tabs that will fill others' holes. It is an equality there. It is not St. Margaret's comes down with all our benefits and all our endowment and all our money and give to the poor. It is not a model of gentle Jesus, kind and good. It is an acknowledging that we need each other, that you have something that will complete me today, and I have something that will complete you tomorrow. It is using the good stewardship that we have received, that I have received. Some of us sing well, and you're in the choir. Some of us read well, and you read. Some polish silver beautifully, and they're on the altar guild. And that's how I learned, actually. My first job at a church was in the altar guild. We interweave the different strengths we have to become that whole puzzle, that whole piece. And it never ends. One year, someone gave us a puzzle that we hadn't used before. And so, as a puzzle, you take all the pieces, you put them off to the side that have edges, right? Only in this puzzle, we discovered that once we got the inner edge going, there was another edge. And then there was another edge and another edge. And for those of us who are of a certain age, it is a reminder that we are never done. We must continue to grow out on the edges. When we have massacres like we had on Monday, it's almost as if part of our puzzle is gnawed away, is eaten away. And it is our job to try to cover that rest of the puzzle in prayer. Because there are 3 ways to create and to fulfill our parts of the puzzle and to be whole. And the first and foremost is not money or cans of food. It is prayer. We are people of prayer. And at best, it is the thing that we do well. So on Monday, for those that were killed and those that mourn, our prayers help them. It is like a mirror that takes God's love and shines more on those people. We are people of prayer, and that is very humbling, because at times that is all we have to help those in need is for prayer. But we also need to be responsible. We have been given abundance. We all have been given abundance. And so that we have to be responsible. We have to be good stewards of that. At St. Margaret's, are we giving the money that we have been endowed with properly? Are the people doing what we want with it well? Why is it that we have and support food for 3 food pantries? Is that the right use of our strengths and our abundance? It's a sense of responsibility. And finally, there is a sense of curiosity. What is it that you have that I need today that will fill me in a hole? And it's not just the curiosity of those that we love. It is the curiosity of those that don't have showers, that don't have what we expect them to have. It is a curiosity of everyone. What is it that you have that will make me whole? Martin Luther King preached his last sermon at the Washington Cathedral, his last sermon before he was killed. And in that sermon, he spoke to this. He said, "Through our scientific and technological genius, we have made of this world a neighborhood, and yet we have not made the ethical commitment to make of it a brotherhood. But somehow and in some way, we have got to do this. We must all learn to live together as brothers, or we shall all perish together as fools. We are tied together in the single garment of destiny, caught in an inescapable network of mutuality. And whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. For some strange reason, I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. And you can never be what you ought to be until I am what I ought to be." This is the way God's universe is made. This is the way it is structured. So when someone goes hungry today, we starve. When someone is blind outside, we can't see. When someone is deaf, we can't hear. It is part of that weaving of the fabric of God's great kingdom that calls us into action. One of the greatest gifts I had about 5 years ago was to run a breakfast program for the homeless in downtown Washington. And how we used our humility, our responsibility, and our curiosity became vital to that program. We fed over 200 people every Sunday morning. And yet it was with a sense of humility. It wasn't, aren't we wonderful to have something that you need? It's not that. Most of our work was actually praying for others that were there for breakfast. And we couldn't say that they were the poor or the homeless. We called them friends because they had something that we needed, and we had something they needed. We had food, and they had their wonderful, incredible stories of their lives and why they were there and how they loved God. They formed a choir that was the most beautiful choir you've ever heard. Boy, did they sing out and sing well. We needed their music just as much as they needed our biscuits and grits. It was a very humbling thing to see their gratefulness and our gratefulness. We also had to be responsible. Once when I first started, there was a man who was waiting in line, and he started to kind of mouth off. Somebody had come and broke up in front of him or something like that, and he got louder and louder, and I didn't know what to do. My job was crowd control, and I couldn't figure out what to do for this man. He hadn't had breakfast yet. The rector came in, went up to talk to him, and then said very loudly, "David, you're gone. You need to leave." And I said to him, the rector later, I said, "Randolph, why did you send him out? He hadn't had breakfast yet. He probably went away hungry." And Randolph turned to me and said he was drunk. And he knew that his responsibility was to show up sober, not drunk. And he knew that if he was drunk, he was not going to get breakfast. That's his responsibility. And who are we to take away that dignity and responsibility from him? One of my greatest pet peeves are the people on at the red lights who come and beg. I asked the people who had become friends at this breakfast program, I said, "How come I don't see you guys begging on the street corners?" And this guy pulled himself up into 6 feet tall, and he said, "Oh, we'd be ashamed to beg. Beggars are lazy. We go out and we work for what we have." So when I see people on the street corner begging, they're a poor, pitiful, homeless veteran, single mother with 3 children. Sometimes their children are with them. And it's so sad to see them. But what kind of connection is it when you roll down your air-conditioned window and you hand them $1 and you roll up the window and drive away at the green light? Have you had any chance to find out who they are? Have you had any responsibility for what they're going to do for that money? So what I do, and that doesn't please them very much, is that I sit there and pray for them. Because to me, that's the best thing I can do for them. It's a certain amount of responsibility on their part as well as my part. Are we fitting together like a puzzle piece? Or am I just disconnected here and handing somebody money? There's a sense of responsibility there. And finally, there's a sense of curiosity. What is it that you have that I need today? God, grant me the curiosity to find out what it is that I need to learn today. We discovered very quickly that when volunteers would come help at the breakfast program, if they were too hesitant to go out and sit with the people for breakfast, then they would burn out very quickly because they had lost a connection. They had lost a curiosity to hear the stories. What is it that makes you want to sleep on the streets? Tell me about your families. Tell me about your growing up. If people were hiding behind the steam tables, then in most cases they wouldn't come back. Because it does get tiresome. It does get drudgery to get up every morning on a Sunday morning at 5 o'clock and turn on the ovens and start to cook. Unless you create a connection there, unless you figure out how your puzzle piece fits with them, then the drudgery gets overwhelming. Very much like Jane the Saint. You eventually just sort of give up and decide to play first base. We are not called to be saints in this church. We are called to be humans. We are called to figure out how best to fit our puzzle piece with yours and yours. Because outreach, or in-reach, is really, in essence, reach. How is it that we are to reach out to each other, to this community and this world? Amen.